So let's go through this song and label all the chords. Now, one thing that's going to make it easier for us here is that I've already told you kind of a hint here that there is one chord happening for every measure with the exception of this very last one right here. Okay? So there's one chord every measure. So we're going to put one Roman numeral on every measure. Okay? So let's start at the very beginning. So we know we're in the key of C major, right? Cool. So if we look at this whole measure, and we kind of had to, even though nothing is spelled out as a chord and played at the same time like it is down here, we can still put a Roman numeral on this by saying everything in this measure falls into a chord, if it does. And in this case, it does. Because we have C, E, and G, right? And then another C in the bass line, C, E, and G. It's all doing C, E, and G. And we know that in the key of C major, if we see C, E, and G, that is the one chord, right? And it's going to be capital because it's going to be major. So here we have a one chord. Let's move on. Here we have C, F, and A, right? And here C, F, and A, C, and C. So it's all C, F, and A. There's only 3 notes in that whole bar. So what can we call that? Well, C, F, and A don't stack up as a chord. Let me just jump over here really quick. Let me just slide it forward. Give me some little workspace here. C, F, and A. There's our chord. So we have a gap here, so we know it's not in root position. Okay? How can we get it into root position? Let's try moving this note up an octave. Put it up there. Oh, boom! It just falls right into a root position chord when I do that. So now we know this is an F chord because that is root position. Okay, let's go back and look at that. So this is an F chord. So what is F in the key of C major? We just spent a long time talking about that, didn't we? It's the 4 chord, right? And it's going to be major because major, minor, minor, major. 4. So this gets Roman numeral 4. Let's go on to this one. C, E, and G. Beautiful. We've just seen that. So we know that this is the same bar as that one. So this is going to get a Roman numeral 1. Cool. Now one more chord. Here we have a B, D, and G. Okay? Another B, B, D, and G. Okay, so let's go back over here and let's look at that one. Let's use right here. What did I say? B, D, and G. Okay? Not in root position. So, and we know that because of that gap right there. So, let's try to get it in root position. What can we do? Let's move this note, let's move the bottom note up an octave to a B. Okay? We're getting close because now these two are in root position. Let's move this one up an octave to another D. Boom, there it is. Now that's in root position. So now we know it's a G. It's a G chord. So G is going to be what in the key of C? G is going to be the 5th scale degree. And we know the 5th is major because of the pattern. So this is going to get a Roman numeral 5 capital because it's major. Okay, now the good news is we're done with most of the piece because it repeats. So here we can see a C, so this is going to be 1. Here we're going to see an F, so that's going to be 4 again. Here we're going to see a C, so that's 1 again. B, D, G, so that's 5 again. Okay, so now we can probably assume this is going to keep going. So 1, 4, 1, 5. Then it gets a little bit different here because we have these upper octaves. But let's look at what the actual notes are. C, E, G, C, E, G, C. Oh, and here's an actual chord in root position. C, E, G. It has another octave on top of it. So that looks like there's a gap there, but we get our 3 notes in root position, which is everything we need. So that's going to be still a 1 chord. Same deal here. Here we can see our root position up there with an F as the root. So there's a 4 chord again. Same thing here. Here's our C. So that's a 1 chord. Here is our, this one's a little tricky. This is our 5 chord, but it looks a little different. If you go here, it looks like an E chord, right? Because we see E, G, and B. So looking closely at that, that is not a G chord. The last beat of right here is an E minor chord, which would be 3 in the key of C major. However, given that we've seen this pattern a bunch of times, I'm fairly certain that this is a typo on the account of this composer. If we wanted to be strict, though, we would call that an E minor right there, because that is an E minor. But I think they probably meant to write that E as a D, which would give us a G major chord, the same one we've been having throughout the piece and for the rest of this measure. So it's just that one note that's off that turns it into an E minor chord. So, we can do what we want with that. If we were being really strict, we'd call it an E minor chord. But I think it's probably a typo. Let's move on. Here we've got a root position C major, so that's a 1, and all these notes fit in with that. And even if they didn't, now that we have just full chords lasting the whole measure, we could just look at those. So that's a C major. Here, same as before, we have an F, an A, and then if there was a C above it, it would be in root position, but that C is down here, which is perfectly fine. It's an inversion. So that's 4, 1 again, and then 5 again, inverted, but 5 nonetheless. There's 1 again, 4 again, 1 again, 5 again, 1 again, 4 again, 1 again, 5 again. Now we get to the end. Remember, we've got this one weird chord in here. So here we've got a 1 chord, so a C major. Here we've got a 4 chord, because it's F major, F, A, C is what we expect to see. So that's a 4 chord. Now we have a 1 chord again, as we expect. And now we expect the next chord to be 5 by the pattern, but instead they put the 5 1 beat early and then jump right back to the 1. So it goes 1, 5, 1. So there's our whole piece. We analyzed it. Now this is a good piece to analyze because this pattern of using 1, 4, and 5 is very, very, very common. Doesn't mean it's bad to do by any means. Those are just 3 chords that work together really well. 1, 4, and 5. They work together great. So it's nice to write music just using that. It's going to be fairly simple, but everyone loves the sound of a 1, 4, and a 5. Awesome. We did an analysis. Good job.